I'm sitting here going, come on. What are we waiting for?
Okay, so we're still getting used to the this new programming, but hey, everybody, welcome to Common Sense Access. My name is Zak Clayton. I am the president and founder, Community Pay It Forward, Community Dare to Care, and the Pack Channels. I am here today with my two great friends, Angela Fowler and Daniel Hodges. Due to technical throw ups, I guess is the best way to put it. Daniel is joining us with audio only. Thanks to the atmosphere, the internet's funky. I guess that's the best way to put it, right, guys? Is the internet's funky? So,
The
um,
internet is the internet. And
so
I
yeah.
I am currently based in East Texas, where there's good internet all around where I live, but not where I live.
you know, I've been in places where computers work everywhere, but where I am, and my sons have no problem telling me, "Dad, that is your fault." So, my sons have no problems telling me that computer issues are mine. Uh, my blame. So,
Well, just
um,
know this, Zach, anytime you hear the acronym PEBCAC, you've been insulted.
what let's go on ahead and expound on that. What?
PEBCAC means problem exists between chair and computer.
Okay, all right. So, hey, we want to begin by expressing our condolences and well wishes to everyone who's being affected by all of this terrible, terrible weather going on out there, and community pay it forward, and pieces of me, and real life access wants you to know that if there's anything that we can do, please reach out to any of us or all of us, and we will do whatever we can to help you out. We are here to help everyone. Make sure that that help is accessible for everyone. So, Angela, let's start with you. Can you please give us an introduction to yourself and real life access?
I would, and before I jump into that, I just want to second what Zach says. You know, when you're sitting out in California or wherever we are, it's hard to truly appreciate the devastation
Yeah.
going on elsewhere. But I've listened to a few people, describe it, and it's just you know it's a terrible thing. So our thoughts and prayers and all that good stuff, and thoughts and prayers are never enough. But at any rate, um, I'm Angela Fowler. I'm the founder and CEO and everything else of Real Life Access, and we basically we teach people how to make things accessible. One human being at a time. We teach accessibility one human being at a time, and that's really the only way to do it. One company at a time, one human being at a time.
Angela, when we do programs like our upcoming miracle program, the one thing that we always tell people is, we're trying to help that first person because you can't help the second one until you help the first. Is that kind of the way that you see it with real life access?
You know, if I can teach one small business how to become accessible, that small business is going to be a role model for other small businesses.
That's a
It really,
wonderful.
yeah, it really is about the human connection. It's about showing people why it is so important for things to be accessible. The advocacy movement, I love you guys. I really do. But the advocacy, you guys sometimes have a messaging problem. Because what happens is the advocacy movement talks about the law, and they talk about discrimination, and they give you the message that if you're not accessible, you're discriminating against people with disabilities. And I think we need to stop using that type of we just need to stop. Just stop. because nobody's out there trying to discriminate. Nobody wakes up and goes, how can I make the blind girl's life miserable today? I know what. I just won't put an alt tag on that image. I'll
And
just I'll just whip up a bunch of JavaScript and we don't need to bother with ARIA. Heck with those screen reader. Nobody's saying that. Come on. Nobody's saying that.
you
People
know, and I think one great example of that, Angela, is when we attempted to record this the other day. I played a video, and I never want to exclude anybody. And I realized when I went to go play this video, I looked at your face. First off, I was confusing the hell out of you because you didn't know what I was doing. And second off, I was playing a video with no narration. There was no, closed captioning, so nothing could be read on the thing. It was just pretty music is all you were hearing, and it's not I would never try to do something to exclude anybody, but this is one of the reasons why when you
do that.
and I got together with Daniel and we started talking about this show, we wanted to make sure this is not a shake your finger at people. This is a, hey, this is what we can do together to make it make it accessible for everyone.
And and thank you for falling on the sword, Zach, because you didn't have to. But Zach, if you know Zach, you know that the last thing that he wants to do is make life difficult for anybody. But we don't. Everybody looks at things through the lens of their own experience, and sometimes we just miss things. Sometimes we're just knuckleheads. You know,
Yeah.
myself included. So it's about education. It's about maybe maybe you knuckle tap on somebody on the head and go, "Hey, goober," but you do it with love and you do it with a smile.
Right.
You don't go, "You're discriminating against black." No, it's no discriminating. Stop it.
Yeah, there is enough shaming, there's enough anger, and enough pointing the fingers at people right now. We don't need to do that anymore. Also, joining us is the founder of a wonderful organization, a really good friend of mine for pretty much a year now, I think, Daniel Hodges, co-founder of Pieces of Me. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Doing good, doing good. Can
Yeah,
you give me tell us a little bit about Pieces of Me, and what is your association, because I know you and Angela work really closely together with each other's organizations.
so Pieces of Me is an organization that my cousin Christy and I started back in 2019. We are working to erase the stigma surrounding disability and chronic illness. Really, what that means is we're trying to transform society's understanding of what disability means and the opportunities that come from opening the doors of inclusion in a thoughtful and meaningful way. So, when we get rid of some of these misconceptions that are out there, when we raise consciousness, hopefully we can also provide some tools that 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 take people from being aware to actually being in a position where they can help us be part of the solution. So, that's what I do in my nonprofit work. And my for-profit work, I consult with Angela for real life access. On any given day, she'll either tell you I'm one of her right pain people or her biggest pain in the backside. Take your pick.
And sometimes both at the same time.
I would probably say oftentimes both at the same time. And Zach, as you and Angela were talking about the commercial, I've been thinking the last couple of days, when I was living in Idaho over the last several months until I got back to Texas. I would watch a daily sports program with one of my friends, and there would be two or three different companies that would routinely advertise on the sports program with some sort of video depictions and just some music in the background. And I finally, months into this regular daily broadcast, looked at my friend and said, "What the heck is this commercial advertising?" And he's like, "You know what? I never realized. Yeah. I guess there really isn't any way for you to know what they're advertising. One was advertising ice cream, the other was advertising an airline, and there was no way of knowing what what was happening in these commercials unless you were sitting there actually looking at the screen.
Yet, Daniel, I'll tell you, seeing Angela's face, and Angela, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or anything here, but seeing Angela's face in the green room backstage, watching her first off just being confused because she didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was trying to make it to where, she could come into focus again. But then seeing that, you know, what is this guy acting like a guy who spins discs? First off, no, because I don't listen to classical music. That's our buddy Z who does that, my brother
Of course.
Z. But so it would have been metal if I was playing music, and then I probably would have seen Angela with other faces.
You
So
would definitely have seen me with other faces. That would not have, you do that, and I'm gonna be, yeah, I'm gonna be spinning up some Hank and Merle and all them guys just because I
Okay,
could.
so one of these days, Zach and I are going to have an episode about the best hard rock and heavy metal bands.
you
Uh,
got it. We'll do that. So
yeah, yeah, you guys do that. You guys do.
okay, let's we again would like to welcome everybody to Common Sense Access. And our episode today is going to be talking about how do we define accessibility based on three categories. Angela, you're going to start this one out, correct?
I'm gonna start this one out. The three categories. So there's three categories of accessibility. Now, when you think of accessibility, and I'm gonna challenge everybody. I mean, we probably we primed the pump with this episode, but so I'm not going to challenge you. But usually, when people think of accessibility, they have one or two images in their mind. They might think of a wheelchair ramp. Um, Sometimes they'll think of alt text. These are definitely part of the accessibility landscape, but they're only one part of the accessibility landscape. So the purpose of this episode is really to broaden everybody's knowledge of accessibility. So let's start with physical accessibility. Um, we'll start with the wheelchair ramp, um, but we'll move out from that because physical accessibility includes everything from whether the coffee pot is actually reachable to people using wheelchairs or whether things are, on a shelf that most human beings can actually reach. Um, to, what about medication bottles? I use the term adult proof medication bottles because you have to be a child to be able to open it.
Oh yeah.
Um, what about loud hard rock music playing in the background when you're trying to have a conversation or listen to something. You know,
See, that
um,
was actually kind of funny. I was able to throw up the devil horns when you did that. So
perfect,
do the
perfect.
whole metal
That
thing. But
is not only that is a perfect response and a good visual description.
uh,
That reminds me of when I was in class one time and I was jarring back and forth with this other girl who just as sassy as I am, and she threw me up the old one finger salute, and our colleague was like, yeah, she just flipped you off, and I said if you're gonna do that, you need to make it accessible. So she came up and she kind of took my hand and goes, look.
yeah. Uh, Physical accessibility. This is the one that is it the one in your experiences? Is it the one that is concentrated on the most? Because in all actuality, it's like, isn't it the easiest to see that there's a problem?
Yes, it
Okay.
is it is the most visually obvious, um, which is why we start there, right? If you're gonna teach anything, you start with what they know and then you move on out from there. Um, but physical accessibility is everything from that good old wheelchair ramp to things in the environment. and food allergies. I was at a buffet for work, and we had one of those big social things that people like me just go for the free food and pray it gets over soon. Anyway, um, but we're trying to identify which kind of pizza is which. And it's tough because you had to visually identify the pizza, and sometimes that's difficult, right? Sometimes you can't as a sighted person, you just can't be sure what it contains. So you know a simple solution to that, which people genuinely don't think of, is just one of two things. Just jot down the what this is for the CITES, but also have somebody there to kind of identify what's what, and sort of explain things. Um, Now, sometimes that's more practical than others, but there are such simple solutions to make things more physically accessible that people just simply don't think of. You know,
Yeah.
so Dan, do you have anything on physical accessibility? I'm running off at the mouth this morning.
No, I mean, like you said, there's, it's not just the tangible things that we always think of, but things like aromas or other allergens, lights, sound, everything that is material in some sense.
Yep, everything that can be touched and moved through. So let's move on to digital accessibility. And we've already been talking about digital accessibility, right? Um, Digital accessibility is everything that comes to us electronically. Um, so I'm going to start with advertising. I never start with advertising, but we already talked about advertising. So am I buying ice cream or an airline ticket? I'm gonna go ahead and place the order and just see what comes and how much money gets spent. And as snarky as that sounds, as a business, you have got to make sure that your advertising is such that everybody knows what they're buying. And here's the thing: it's not just for blind people. What if the people listening to the sports program were driving? What if they're watching a 2-year old? What if they're otherwise multitasking? Their eyes are, because it's a talk show, they're listening to it, right? So what if their eyes are otherwise engaged? They're still not going to know what's being advertised if you don't have some sort of soundtrack, and not just a soundtrack of disembodied noises and words, a soundtrack that actually tells the viewer what is being advertised. Um, so that's digital accessibility. It also involves social media. When you comment on my status with a GIF, I can only guess as to what you're trying to say based on the context of the post. Because if you don't describe that GIF is not accessible.
Let
Um,
me, I've got a real quick question about this. Can you over over explain something? Uh,
oh, trust me.
okay.
Um, we're gonna have to do a special episode on explaining things, and different people want a different level of detail too. I tell people it's an art, not a science. Too much detail, and my brain just freezes and runs away. Um, but some people like all that detail. But a lot of times, what I've seen people do when they first realize that they need to explain things is they overcompensate, and they explain every single detail of the thing. But really, what is needed is just the important information. I don't need to know how many leaves are on the apple tree.
Right.
So the website is a big one too, and one of the major things that we do with our buddy Trevor and Z is we do website remediation. Um, And I'll give you an example. Number one rule of accessibility, of web accessibility, or one of them, do not require a mouse. If your website cannot be used with a keyboard, blind people can't use it. Sighted keyboard users, so people who have motor difficulties that make using the mouse difficult. People that just prefer to use a keyboard, and a lot of people do. A lot of people just think that keyboard navigation is actually faster, believe it or not. Um, those guys are going to be. They can use a mouse, but they're people go with what's easiest, right? People go path of least resistance. Nobody wants to work any harder than they need to. So one rule: do not require a mouse. Cardinal rule. Um, so that's what we do. We teach people how to not require a mouse. Because you're looking at me going, "Yeah, don't require a mouse. How the hell do I do that?" That's what we do. That's what we teach people. That's what we can do for you, if the situation calls for it. So it sounds like we're putting a lot on you, and we are. But for one thing, it's not going to happen overnight. We understand that. I think people get a little overwhelmed. They think, I got to do all this today. No, that's um, and two, real life access is with you every step of the way. Anything further on digital, Dan?
I would say, one of the benefits of working with experts like Real Life Access is also, we can help customers understand whether a glitch in the coding or a barrier is really significant or not. So, for example, let's say Zach and I are trying to buy our tickets online to go see Judas Priest. And, there's a real difference between whether you run into an image on the ticket screen that is, maybe it's a picture of the band and it's not properly labeled. That can be, slightly inconvenient, but it's not a huge deal. Versus if something is broken in the code that won't allow us to select our seats, or, causes me to not be able to, put in my credit card information properly. You could have everything else absolutely perfect on there, but for that one thing. But that one thing could prevent me from completing the purchase. So it's not just about the number of accessibility errors that are going to be present, because there's always going to be something. It's like with a house, there's always something you could go and tweak. But is the problem something that is cosmetic, or is the problem something that needs immediate redress? Otherwise, you won't be able to proceed.
Exactly. And let me talk a little bit about payment processors, because most people, well, pretty much everybody uses some sort of third party payment processor. So if that's you and you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, what?" We can do one of two things. We can recommend a more accessible payment processor to switch to, or if you're using third party software and you feel like you need to use that software, we can actually help you approach that company, and say, "Look, this product that you are selling to your clients is not accessible to people with disabilities, and it's making your clients vulnerable to not only legal liability, but liability in the court of public opinion. So let us help you make your software accessible for the benefit of not only you, but your clients. We can help you have that conversation." Because a lot of people don't want to do it. They don't have time, for one thing, and they don't know how, for another. So that's something that real life access can do. But yeah. Do be cognizant of it. Don't make it hard for me to give you money. Yeah, because then I'll end up giving somebody else the money.
Right, right. One of the things that I learned in this segment about the digital is I've never thought about how important um, navigating with a mouse is, how you need your eyes to do it.
Mhm.
You can't just click and point with the mouse, and anywhere. And I had never put the two together again, and so that's one of the things that I really learned in this segment.
Yeah, you need your eyes. You need a
Hmm.
steady hand.
Yeah.
You need a hand that works. Um, and you need to prefer the mouse mode of navigation. Some people don't. So the mouse is one way to do things, but it is for a lot of people it is either an inferior way to do it or it's a way that just doesn't work. Um, so moving on to cultural accessibility. And cultural accessibility is actually the hardest to define. But an example of cultural accessibility actually happened the other day, right? When Zach played that video, we handled the situation with humor, with okay, this is what we're going to do in the future. Nobody, it was just an ordinary thing that we just dealt with. And the crux of cultural accessibility, the thing that you need to remember is difference is ordinary. If a blind person walks in, don't treat it like an extraordinary event. Be like, oh, I got a customer who's blind. Okay. How can I help them? Do I need to help them? And when difference is ordinary, building your products and services so that they naturally accommodate difference becomes the ordinary course of things.
Okay. Let me ask a favor here. We've talked about it before, but do you think it would be a good idea to show people this commercial on what we were talking about, and then that way they can see exactly where I messed up in the creation of this commercial?
You show the commercial, and I will give a visual description based on whatever happens to be in my head. No, actually, I won't.
Yeah, yeah. Let's not do that. We're trying to keep this at least a PG
Yeah.
25.
No.
So,
Okay. So here's
but
what we're going to do. So I urge viewers, okay, close your eyes, or if you're driving, do not close your eyes. But focus your eyes on something other than what's on the screen, and see if you can't tell me from listening to this video what the video is all about.
so okay, here we go.
You're away.
Now, as a person with full sight, as a person with most of my faculties available, there's a lot of information in there. The one thing that I really made a mistake on, one of the things that we tried to make a point, I tried to make a point on, accessible for everyone. It states it right there in print. I never ever thought,
And
oh,
that's a pretty song. I like the piano. I like the rhythm. It's sort of got this easy rhythm that you can just sort of rock to and just sort of get the feel of. Close your eyes, let your mind drift away. Yeah, you know, I like playing that music. Um, you know, and that's what I get out of that as a blind person.
Yeah. And like I said, it was really funny. Well, it wasn't really funny. It was shocking to me when I realized, and I would repeat the exact words I thought of as soon as I looked down at your picture, and I realized, holy cow, she can. I didn't say cow. I said to myself, she doesn't know. She has no way of knowing what's going on right now. No way of going on right now. And that realization, it it embarrassed me, but it wasn't intentional. Like I said, it was something that I was just like, it was a real slap in the face moment.
And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, how do I handle this?
Well, the good news is that I can, I'm pretty easy to handle. All you got to do is look at me and go, "Huh? What is wrong with you?"
You know,
So,
and if I'd been faster, I would have played it off like you did it intentionally in the teaching moment. I didn't quite succeed in doing that. I should have. You
yeah, I will be honest with you. I am so, if anything, if the one great thing that came out of that is, Z and I are going to talk later on today, and we're going to rework that spot, because that's a spot for Mr. Z,
I'm
and we're going to rework it.
tease the hell out of Mr. Z on Friday. He is gonna. He
Oh
is
yeah.
like Mr. Z. What are you doing?
Yeah,
I'm
that's good. Then he can take some of this, self-imposed heat that I put on there. But it's actually made my last couple days very, very busy, because I'm going back to all the spots that I've created with no voice over, and trying to correct things.
And I think that's such an important point because, as Angela was saying earlier, we have got to turn down the temperature. And I'm speaking directly in the advocacy circles. We've got to turn down the temperature and give people a chance to remedy these things with our help, instead of feeling like they're up against it. And I mean, Angela and I are aware of, a protest that's happening in a couple of weeks where we're like, okay, maybe the companies, these are big companies that have consistently, um, not done what the blind community has hoped, but the messaging is also wrong, and we have to look at what are we doing to help be part of the solution, and what are we doing that we need to be aware of that is actually perpetuating the problem, because each of us, no matter how we try, if we're not very careful and self-aware, can easily do harm that we're not expecting to do.
Yeah, and let me just say two things, because I also don't want to turn this too far the other way. We advocates aren't perfect, and sometimes we speak from a place of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my when when it's somebody else's accessibility issue, or if I'm working with a client, or I know there's going to be issues, I'm expecting issues, I am a calm, rational, jovial, level-headed, easy to work with, professional woman. When I'm not expecting issues and I just expect to get something done, like right now, I become completely different. And my frustration just explodes into point. And I have to stop, and I have to take a step back and say, try to come into some of the accessibility, and it's helped me.
I am. I'm actually really hoping that on the recording we could pick you up a little bit better because your microphone just all of a sudden, now your microphone cut out. You're not on mute. I don't know what happened. We just lost your audio.
Is
Um,
that
that's better. Yeah.
okay? My microphone was too far away.
Okay.
So anyway, where did you lose me?
It pretty much started right after you began speaking.
Oh, lovely. Okay. So when I'm working with a client or when I'm advocating for somebody else's accessibility issue, basically I know there's going to be issues and I go into it in professional mode. I'm a calm, jovial, easygoing, rational, understanding professional. But when I'm trying to get something done and there's accessibility barriers that wasn't expecting, and I just want to get this done, I'm a completely different person. I become the customer. My frustration level goes into the stratosphere, and I have to check myself sometimes. So for non-accessibility professionals that come to you and say, this shit's inaccessible, please understand that they're coming from a place of intense frustration. Um, and this may be the sixth or seventh inaccessible thing that they've run into all day, and you're the one they were able to catch. So please understand these guys are frustrated. They've been they over 90% of websites have accessibility problems. So this is how commonplace this is. Now, to my advocate friends, I'll say to you, if I hear you use the word discrimination one more time, I swear to God, I will give you the biggest raspberry on because
She's
this is
threatening raspberries. Watch out, everybody.
except in the rarest of cases, this is not deliberate discrimination. Now, Dan mentioned the protests, and you've heard of this company. This is a company that has grown exponentially over the past decade. I mean, we're talking a meteoric rise into household name status. You have used this company probably. If you haven't used it, you've heard of it. And there's a lot of complicated issues going on. They've grown. I think they have outgrown their ability to provide effective customer service. Um, and I think they've suddenly decided that well, there's a number of things going on, and I'm not even sure that I've sorted it all out of my own head. But when we go and protest that company, maybe that company deserves it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they deserve it in some ways and not in others. But what message does that send to the small business person that says, "Wow, if you're going to protest that company, maybe I'm next"? First of all, you're not. But second of all, we need to get better at messaging. We need to get better. If we're gonna make the world a more accessible place, we need to start meeting people where they are and working with them.
I I think one of the biggest messages out there, it has to be, look, every day of your life you're learning something new.
Yep.
Okay? Every day of your life you're learning something new. And if we approach this in a more kinder, gentler way, it's a hell of a lot easier to learn something when somebody's saying, "Hey, I went to your website and I was having trouble, navigating in this area.
Yep.
I've been on other websites and they've done it like this, and I know that was really helpful for me." You're going to
Yep.
get a lot, there's all the old sayings, but you're going to get a lot more respect than if you walk in there and you just automatically go after him and say, "Well, I was on your website, I couldn't do this. F you, I'm gone."
You're
Okay?
Yeah.
discriminating against what in yeah, the putting people on the defensive has always led to better relationships and more productive working together. That yeah, I where did we ever get that idea? Where did we ever get the idea? Going to motivate them to do better without telling them how to do better. You got to tell them how, and you got to tell them why.
Yeah.
If we were to encapsulate the work that we do on cultural accessibility, both the course that we wrote and the overall theme of that segment of our work, difference is ordinary is one of the catchphrases. The other one is curiosity over skepticism, and
Exactly.
we're gonna do a full episode on that. So help me at some point, but curiosity. Okay, what do you need? How can I help? How can I support you? Just good human questions, and then also on the other side, I see this barrier. I'm experiencing this frustration, and what is causing this, the what is the barrier on the developer end, on the business end, that is keeping this in place. I think as advocates we can do a better job asking those questions. As businesses and as allies, people could do a better job of asking those how questions from a curiosity standpoint, willing to learn. But it is going to take time. But it also comes back to saying, okay, I can be part of the solution, which starts with me being self-aware enough to examine where I'm at and whether my intentions are aligning with my actions, recognizing that we're human. They're probably not fully, but we can always take an extra stride to align our intentions with our actions more effectively every day.
And let me give you an actionable next step. If you're a business person, you have accessibility challenges. You don't know what they are, but you know they maybe they'll take a while to solve. But when that customer comes to you, while you're fixing the accessibility challenges long term, but solve their problem for them in the moment. Empower your customer service representatives to solve their problem for them in the moment, because one of the most just frustrating things that I run across as a blind consumer is when I call customer service because things aren't accessible, and I get, well, unfortunately, the system won't allow me
Yeah.
to do A, B, and C. And the reason that a lot of blind people or people with disabilities file lawsuits, I think, is because they don't know how else to solve the problem. It's like when you get frustrated with the computer and you just smack something.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do here. I'm frustrated. This I feel like this is an immovable situation here. So empower your customer service representatives or do it yourself to solve their problem for them in the moment.
Well, I think this is one of those things where we're going to be talking about quite a bit. I think this is one of those that's going to grow, and with changes, this will be one that we talk about a lot more in the near future. Angela, how do people reach out to you?
Well, you can reach out to me by going to www.reallifeaccess.com, fill out my little contact form, or you can simply email me at angela@reallifeaccess.com. And next episode is going to be a fiery one too, because we're going to do a little myth busting about disability.
That's going to be fun. Daniel, how do people reach out to you?
So feel free to email me at Daniel at pieces of me, PEACES of me.org. And, Zach, you asked me earlier in the episode what Pieces of Me does. And one of the things that we do is we provide that safe place that fills the gap between having the good intention of being inclusive and actually knowing how to do it. A lot of times people are very afraid to engage in those early awkward conversations because they don't want to say or ask the wrong thing. That's one of the things that I do with pieces is give you that spot where I say, look, if you're willing to engage in this conversation with me, I'm going to assume good intent because you're showing good
Yeah.
intent.
Mhm.
So let's sit down, work through the fluff, and let's figure out how to make this work for you so that you can go out and do your best work.
I
Look,
love when a business person asks me, "How the hell do blind people use the web anyway?" Because that gives me an opening.
yep.
That gives me the opportunity to teach.
And look, the whole point of this is to educate. The whole point about this is just to make you aware that of things that can be done. There's no finger pointing. This is just so far it's an eye opening show, as I've already expressed. Well, Angela and Daniel, thank you so very much for this week's episode of Common Sense Access. Next week, we will be myth busting, which is great. I can't wait for that one. So I want to catch gas in a can and light it on fire. Oh, no, wrong kind of myth busting, but still.
That's going to be fun. Get ready for the next one because some of these myths are that we're going to come up with are understandable, and some of them.
Yeah, I've seen one question that confused me, but all right, well, thank you both.
All right.